All right. So I wanted to just share my thoughts on the tariffs, and so I'm going to get right into it. Uh, so you have, I don't know how much you're paying attention to the tariffs. It's rather fascinating from where I'm sitting. And so let me explain that a little bit. Okay, my boss that I work for right now, I did not even realize this until like 2 days ago. How the tariffs are going to affect my boss and my boss's business, which in turn will affect me and other people that work for my boss. And I mean, like, it's big. And for some reason, I didn't connect the dots. And then like 2 days ago, it was brought up, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Okay. See, so my boss, right? He runs his business. He's been running this business for like 30 years. Okay. And like the majority of his business, he deals with China. So he imports shit from China. I mean, he imports from other places too, but China is is the biggest one. Surprise, right? Everything nowadays is made in China, right? And this is well, when you think about the idea of everything being made in China, all that is exploitation. So China is this communist country that openly enslaves its population, and then all these businesses and companies send their business overseas because they can they can exploit the slavery system in China rather than having to pay fair wages here in America. They can just they can just move their business overseas and exploit the slavery system of China and increase their profit margins by a lot. Okay, but see, that's the American way. It doesn't matter who I'm exploiting, especially if I don't see the exploitation. When the exploitation is in China, well, I don't even have to acknowledge reality for what it is. I just hang out in America while my business is based in China and the exploitation of Chinese people, and just sit here and wait for the money to come flowing in. And I don't see any exploitation, out of sight, out of mind. I didn't see anything, right? And, like people are kind of, there's this soft, subtle attempt to try to portray these business people as victims of the tariffs and stuff. But if you base your income on the exploitation of others, and you end up like making really good money doing it, where you're making really good money on the exploitation of some people in some communist country, and you're just like kicking back and letting the money roll in and not really caring or paying any attention because you're good, you're fine. What does it matter if, who knows? Who cares, right? You're fine. And then all of a sudden this tariff thing happens, and then exporting of goods from China comes to a screeching halt. And your whole business is dependent upon, the exploitation of the Chinese. Okay? And so then your business all of a sudden is under threat of being fucked because of you depending on the exploitation of Chinese people for your business. So then it comes to a screeching halt because of Trump and the tariffs, right? And then all of a sudden you're the victim. Meanwhile, you completely ignore the victimization of all this exploitation of these Chinese people in the communist regime of China, right? That doesn't matter, and that you're profiting from the exploitation of the Chinese stuff, in the communist exploitation of the Chinese in China. That doesn't matter. But when this tariff thing starts fucking up your lucrative business that is based on the exploitation of Chinese people, well, now all of a sudden there's a problem. It's like, oh my God, I've got all this stuff that's supposed to be coming in, and now all of a sudden there's like a 34% tariff, and so I'm fucked. Like I'm losing a massive profit margin. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to break even from this, right? So then pull out the victim card. I'm a victim of evil Trump. This is all delusion. That's delusion to think that way. That's delusion to think and act that way. To make a comfortable living off of the backs of the exploitation of a population that's oppressed by communism or authoritarianism of some sort, and to just make a comfortable or even more than comfortable living doing that, and then all of a sudden when these tariff happens, now all of a sudden you who was making a comfortable living off of the exploitation of these people, now all of a sudden you're not even going to break even. You're going to go in the hole this year because of the tariffs, and therefore you are the victim. This is the way the whole system works. This is why I criticize. Ooh, my back. See, my back. This is why I criticize the working and middle class, because somebody has to criticize the working and middle class, right? Because especially the middle class. But the thing is there is no middle class. This is why the so-called middle class must be criticized, is because these people that believe they're middle class are not middle class. And their belief in their middle class status fuels this superiority complex that they have, that they think they're better than poor people and homeless people when they're not. There is no middle class. Middle class is an illusion. Like I talked about when I became homeless, and how my parents, their whole identity was based in an outward appearance. So the family that I lived in, my parents, they emphasized the importance of outward appearances, that it outwardly appear to everyone else that we are a middle class family, but inwardly we aren't middle class. We're poor. My parents are cheap penny pinchers, and they're just cheap penny pinchers that are obsessed with propping up this Potemkin village illusion to the outside world that we are just these middle class people, when we're not. We're totally we're at or below poverty level, but we're using all this money to prop up this facade that we are middle class. This is what usury is all about. Like, you see these people, it's like, I know I'm digressing, but I'm going to digress. Like, you see these people they're driving a really nice new car, and they're driving all retarded, like they're totally irresponsible, ignoramus cunts. Well, there's a reason that you see people driving really nice cars that are driving like they're a 15-year-old and are acting all retarded on the road. See, that's because the reason that they appear to be irresponsible, even though they have this really nice car, as though they are a responsible, civilian, upstanding civilian, and they're driving like they're a fucking retard, like they're some retarded fucking 15-year-old kid frying on acid or something. That's because that's what usury does. That's what all this usury, like, I'm going to borrow money at a ridiculous interest rate because I am more like, what's important to me is that everybody thinks I'm cool. So I'm going to get this fucking cool car at this ridiculous interest rate, knowing I'm never going to pay for this car. And I'll eventually file for bankruptcy or do some kind of scam or something. But I just want to drive around in a cool car so that everybody is impressed with how awesome I am and how much better I am than they are. And then I drive like a 15-year-old kid frying on fucking acid in this car. The only people that can truly afford cars like this are people that are responsible, that are actually doing something other than frying on acid and acting like a 15-year-old kid. But yet, for some reason, you see all these people driving these nice cars that are driving like they're a retarded 15-year-old kid frying on acid. And you see this often. Why? Why would this be? My point is, there is no middle class. It is a false perception. These masses of people that have this outward appearance that they're middle class, these masses of people that present this outward appearance as though they're middle class, are deluded. They have fallen for the trap of usury and bank loans and usury loans and credit card debt and stuff. And they just swallow themselves up in debt so that they can appear like they're cool, like they really got it going on. And the majority of these people that do this are the biggest pieces of shit. Like they're the most irresponsible people. That's why you see all these people driving like idiots on the road and stuff, but yet they're driving a car that only a middle class or upper middle class person could afford. Well, middle and upper middle class people don't act like retarded 15-year-old kids frying on acid. Yet you see it often, and more. Every year there's more of it, right? Like, this is a massive Potemkin village illusion. There is no middle class. And see, these people that pretend they LARP, they live action role play as though they're middle class when they're just some loser. They're nobody. There's nothing special about them at all. But they have this outward appearance as though they're very special in comparison to you, who works some slave labor job and drives a fucking hoopty, right? And this is all the sheeple. This is total sheeple mentality. And then it's the sheeple that fall for it. Like, some girl sees some dumb retard driving around in a really nice car, and the girl just falls head over heels. Oh, that's my soulmate. That's my soulmate. I'm in love. This is the average, like, this is idiocracy. This is your average intelligence level of people in this country, in the United States, but in the world abroad. Everything is about money. It's all about money. But see, that's the most superficial thing you could possibly, that's the most superficial, like, outlook on life you could possibly have. Yet, seemingly everyone has the same percent. Everything is about money. It's how nice of a car do you drive, How nice of a car do you drive? How nice is your house? Will determine whether whether I have respect for you or not. It's totally retarded. And this is society. Society is totally retarded. So going back to these tariffs, right? And see, and now I like my boss. And I do not have ill will. I don't want to see people suffer, right? It kind of goes back to the thing, though, fuck around and find out. Like, if you start fucking around, and I'm not saying this is what's happening with my boss or not, but I'm telling you, it's a major eye-opener. I just found out 2 days ago that these 30% or whatever, 4% or more of China tariffs are going to have a major impact on my boss's business. And even though I don't want to see people suffer. The thing though is if, like, for example, if I fuck around with something, let's say I get involved in a business. Well, gem and mineral business is another great example. Like, so you have these slaves that are digging up gems and minerals in some poor area in Brazil. And if I get involved and I think, oh, well, there's slaves digging up crystals in Brazil, so I can buy those crystals for like a very low price. Like a crystal that costs $1,000, I can buy for a penny. And so if I buy like 5 or 10,000 pounds of crystals for pennies, for a fraction of pennies on the dollar, even though slaves are the people that are digging all these crystals up and it's pure exploitation, and I'm basically funding slavery, but I can make a good living off of that. I can have a nice car, nice house. So I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to, pursue that career of exploiting, people for personal profit. That's what I'm going to do, because everybody's got to make a living, right? And so I get involved in that. But that's what I do, is I support slavery because I make a lot of money off of it. But I don't see the slavery. That's all going on way outside of my purview. I don't even have to look at it. I just invest, and then profit is returned, and so I'm cool, right? Then I look around and I see these poor people, and I can't understand why these people are poor. Like, they must be retarded. They don't know that you can like exploit people and make a good living. Like how this is the perception. You don't even understand. If you don't understand, you don't understand that this is the perception. This is common. This is like the common perception of your average person, that it's totally okay to make a decent living off of exploiting people for profit and gain. This is totally normal. And like everybody's doing it. And see, and then it goes back to that whole concept of what does it say? You can't convince a person of a thing when their paycheck is dependent upon them being ignorant of it. So if you invest in exploiting slaves in order to make a living or make good money, well, that is dependent upon your ignorance of the exploitation of those slaves. You must be ignorant. Like, that's a requirement. You just have to. And so thank God the exploitation is happening in Brazil, some poor region in Brazil, and you're in America. You don't even have to, like, it's hardly even noticeable. Like, you can just check the fuck out, and then the money just comes in. It's dependent upon the ignorance of that exploitation of those people. And it's the same in China. And another thing is that boomers, the previous generation, like I'm X generation, the previous generation has completely and utterly sold out to this ignorance. And these are the same people that look at the X generation like, what's wrong with these people? Why can't they figure out how to, be in a position in life where I'm at? They must just be lazy. All those X generation, they don't want to work. That's work, is exploiting people. See, this is a massive. This is why I'm so fascinated with the concept of work. Like, it is a complete and utter joke. The whole concept of work and employment and all this stuff. And then you got these people that are like complaining that homeless people need to get a job. What are you even talking about? You have got to be completely retarded. You're just another sheeple if you're like, these homeless people are lazy, they need to get a job, they don't want to work. Meanwhile, the boomers are the ones who see that the exploitation of oppressed people is work. And they don't even have to really do anything. They just kind of sit around and wait for their profits to come overseas from the exploitation of oppressed countries like China and shit. And then they look down on the X generation because the X generation. Well, why can't these people get a job? Why is this X generation? They can't even afford a house and they can't even afford a car. What's wrong with What's wrong with the youth today? You know, this is the boomers, and dude, like I work for these guys all the time. So this is what's interesting. Like, if you work for a corporation, you never see the people up at the top. But see, like the jobs that I've been working the last 7 or 8 years, these are multimillionaires that have a crew of like 7 people. Like their business is a multi-million-dollar business, and they have like 5 to 7 people, and I'm one of those 5 to 7 people. So I am in direct contact with the multimillionaire running this. And the whole thing is based in the exploitation of slaves digging crystals out of the ground in some impoverished region in Brazil. Or their business is totally based on slaves in China who are being exploited. So their whole business is based on the exploitation of people. Like to extreme measures. You know, like the suicide nets in China, where they have suicide nets around their industries because the working conditions are so poor that the Chinese are like trying to kill themselves jumping out of a window, so they had to put up suicide nets. This is where these people are, and it's not just like my boss, like it's everywhere in everything. And that nobody listens to me is totally absurd. No, like I don't get any engagement where people like engage with. And again, this is why homelessness is so fascinating, because these same people who are making a lot of money exploiting others are the same people that are criticizing the homeless and how the homeless are just lazy and they're mentally ill and all this stuff. Like, who is the mentally ill person? A person that exploits like people for profit, or a person that's homeless because they can't navigate a society that is based in exploiting people for personal profit and gain? Who is the insane person here? Everything is inverted, isn't it? I thought everything is inverted. Richie from Boston and all the conspiracy theorists talk about how everything is inverted. Well then, what does that mean in relation to homeless people? Who is the lazy, mentally ill, drug-addicted, criminal, vagrant, degenerate? Is it the homeless? Or is it the people that exploit people for personal and profit? How are homeless people exploiting others for personal profit and gain in comparison to a multimillionaire who runs a business that is dependent upon the exploitation of the Chinese? Who is the lazy person in that scenario? Who is the mentally ill one? I thought everything is inverted, man. The conspiracy theorists were right. Everything is inverted. Oh, but those homeless people? No, they're just lazy, mentally ill, drug-addicted, criminal, vagrant, degenerates. Don't even pay attention. Just ignore those homeless people. Because I'm awesome. I'm important. I'm a working class person. I'm not lazy like those homeless people. I'm not lazy like Bill Gates. I'm just right. And that goes back to what I'm saying is someone needs to criticize, because again, there is no middle class. Middle class is an illusion. When you see that nice middle class car driving down the road, at least 9 times out of 10, that's just some dumb motherfucker who is swallowing themselves up in usury debt so that they can appear to everyone that they're cool. That's all. So middle class is a total illusion. Like the Potemkin village effect that is happening in the U.S. is beyond an embarrassment. All there is rich and poor. That's all there is. And the whole middle class is such a lie. But yet, like But nobody wants to talk about poverty on your favorite free speech platform. The reason they don't want to talk about poverty is because they are controlled. The narrative is completely controlled, and these people, these platforms that do this commentary and supposedly put out all this information, they're controlled by their handlers. And it's through fashion and trend, because it's not fashionable to talk about homelessness. It's not fashionable to talk about poverty. It's not popular and trendy to talk about homelessness and poverty. It's not fashionable, it's not popular, it's not trendy, it's not cool. And the most important thing is to be cool. That's why these people swallow themselves up in usury debt, so that, look at me, I'm driving this nice car, when they're just another schmuck. They're just a homeless person driving a fucking $50,000 car. It's all on loan. They're plastic people. Potemkin Village. You know what I mean? And but anyways, yeah, so these tariffs are having an impact, direct impact on these businesses that I've been working. And again, I'm telling you, like if you work for a corporation, you never see the boss. The boss is up in the ivory tower. See, my job is a kind of like a microcosm, where because my boss is a multimillionaire, my boss is making fucking millions of dollars, close to a billionaire. Yet he only has a crew of like 5 people. Well, how does that happen? I don't know. I'm just a grunt. I'm just a slave. But yet, because there's only 5 people in this business, I have direct contact with the multimillionaire that runs that business on a regular basis. Like, we actually have conversations. We'll sit in a truck for like 2 hours driving, and it's just me and the boss talking. So I, a formerly homeless person, am talking to a multimillionaire who's like practically a billionaire, and it's me and that person, like 2 total opposites on the spectrum, sitting in a vehicle driving for 2 hours, having conversations. Pretty odd, wouldn't you say? And so my boss is going to take a big hit from these tariffs if it doesn't change. You know, it's already happening, right? And if you look into the tariff stuff, like these businesses in China, where these businesses are dependent upon exporting all this shit to America, well, these smaller people that are lower on the totem, they're gonna probably end up homeless because of the tariffs. Like, there's gonna be serious shit going down, and because it's affecting the U.S., which I see it in my personal life, my direct personal life, like dude, these tariffs, I might not even be able to work this job anymore. In a year or less, it might end up where my boss retired because of the tariffs. He can retire. He's way more than enough money to retire. You know, he could have retired 5-10 years ago and live and not even be able to spend all the money he's made. So to him, it's nothing to retire. If it gets that bad, he'll just be like, well, I'm retiring. I guess I'm going to retire. You know, the tariffs. Like, to him, it's nothing. To me, well, who knows? Because how many people are going to retire? How many people are like him that are going to retire, that can retire? Like the whole boomer generation that sold out to the say no to drugs. All these boomers that were doing all these drugs in the 60s and everything. Then the 80s come along and mainstream media tells them, now they're parents with children, and mainstream media is telling them that drugs is, people are dropping like flies from smoking marijuana. Your children are smoking marijuana. And these same boomers who were partying every day, everything was a big party in the 60s. In the 80s, they all fucking yuppified and you know, it's hip to be square. All those hippies, all that boomer generation that grew up in the hippie era, they were all, everything was a big party. Everybody fucking have free love, sex, orgies, acid, fucking coke, heroin, everything, a big party. Then they have children, boomers, and then their children grow up in the 80s. And the boomers are getting older. They're cutting their hair. They realize the hippie movement's over. The party's over. It's hip to be square. So now they're all being square. And then the mainstream narrative is telling all these boomers that everybody's dropping like flies from smoking marijuana and drugs. Your children are turning into demons from smoking marijuana. And then the whole boomer fucking generation drinks that fucking Kool-Aid hook, line, and sinker. And so now they're like, they become these authoritarian moles, these authoritarian like Manchurian candidates for the establishment. And they all just start like sending their children to re-education camps because their children, they found out their child had, their teenage daughter or son was smoking weed on the weekends. And so they send them to the indoctrination camps and shit. This is what happened to the X generation. Then as a result, what happens? You have this massive population of homeless people. Where did all these homeless people come? Oh, they're all just lazy, mentally ill, drug-addicted, criminal, vagrant degenerates who failed to take personal responsibility for their lives. Say the boomers who run the entire media, all media. Boomers run all media. And so, of course, the boomers aren't going to take responsibility and accountability for their insanity. The boomers sold out and sold everyone down the river for their own personal profit. While they proclaim what decent, moral, upstanding people they are, and they just sold their own kids down the river to put them into indoctrination, lock them up in drug and alcohol rehabilitation indoctrination centers because say no to drugs, because your children are transforming into demons by smoking marijuana. And that's only the first hysteria. Then after that fizzles out, then it's AIDS. Everybody's dropping like flies from AIDS. So all these boomers, and then what are all these boomers doing now? They're all making a living exploiting people from China and shit. And then they're sitting around exploiting these scenarios like in China with suicide nets and sweat, whatever. And then they're looking at the generation after them, the X generation, and shaking their head and wagging their finger like Kens and Karens. Like, what's wrong with these people? They don't know how to make a living. Back when I was their age, I walked 6 miles in barefoot, snow, uphill, both ways. Like, and they don't even care how delusional they are. Because that's how you make a living in today's society is accepting delusion. And selling everybody down the river. Whoever you got to sell down the river so that you can live comfortably. And then look at everyone who isn't living comfortably and shake their head and wag their finger. Like, this is what society is. This is what this whole fucking thing is. That's why they came out with that movie Society. Remember the movie Society? And it had all those monsters and like fucking monsters like that were like giant penises walking around in society and shit. Like, dude, that movie Society is based on a true fucking story, dude. Like, you live in a retarded Potemkin village. There is no upward mobility where if you work hard, you'll get rewarded. That's all bullshit. Look at how hard these fucking these sweat people in China work. They're working so hard they have to put up suicide nets to prevent them from jumping out of a fucking building. And are they getting rewarded? Well, it's not that different in the U.S. It's just a different kind of the same thing, you know. United States of America is a repackaged, rebranded, fucking identical version of fucking communist China. And the curtains are being pulled back, and all the tables or chairs are being pushed to the side, and the brick wall at the back of the building is slowly becoming more and more apparent to everybody. All these people believing in all this fucking money magic and all this faggotry bullshit. Everybody's getting sick. Everybody's either malnutritioned or fucking so fucking overweight they can hardly get out of the fucking couch. So yeah, these tariffs, man, this is a very eye-opener for me. Like I said, I have direct contact with my multi-million-dollar fucking boss. And 2 days ago, the tariffs were brought up, and it was softly, it was like softly mentioned, and I heard it, and I was like, what? I never even thought of that. Like, my boss is dependent upon all this fucking import shit from China. Is like half of his business or more is based in that. And now he's basically going to cancel his most recent shipment. That if they don't ship it before the tariffs fucking take full effect, he's going to have to cancel the order. And dude, you don't even know. Like, remember I was telling, well, whatever, it don't matter. So, and if this is directly affecting me, how many other people is it directly affecting? And then, so the thing that's funny is people can say like, oh, well, that's all just propaganda. I don't believe you're even listening to any of that conversation on tariffs. Well, when it's directly affecting me, where it's like, it's like if they stage a false flag, and as a result of staging a false flag, there's actually a real war. Well, does that staged false flag mean that the war isn't real? Not at all. Just like Black Sabbath said, they leave the fighting to the poor. They send the poor out to go fight the false flag wars. But the false flag itself, yeah, it was false. But who pays for it? Who lives the fucking reality? Who lives the actual hell as a result of the false flag? Well, Black Sabbath was right. Politicians and all these other people, fucking all these elite people, they don't go out and fight these wars that they false flagged for personal profit and gain on the exploitation of other people. They send the poor out to fight. But yet, it's interesting, nobody talks about the poor. A Corbett report, they never talk about the poor. True Stream Media never talks about the poor. Richie from Boston, all these guys, they never talk about the poor. But they love to talk about the false flag wars and how the wars were started by false flags. Yeah, sure, that's all theatrical, staged theater. But the actual suffering of the poor people that are sent to fight, that's not staged theatrics and ketchup gate. That's real. Well, so then why does True Stream Media talk about false flags, but they don't talk about that it's the poor that gets sent out? See, I have way more respect for Black Sabbath than I do True Stream Media or Corbett Report or any of these others, because at least Black Sabbath says the truth in their song. It says, politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why should they go out to fight? They leave that all to the poor. Well, there you go. And if that's true, which it is, I mean, listen to Corbett Report and True Stream Media go on and on about how all these wars are false flags. Yet they conveniently omit the second half of that truth, which is that Black Sabbath had no problem saying is that politicians and all these people that start these wars, they hide away. why should they go out to fight? They leave all that fighting to the poor. So it's the poor that suffer from all this. But why doesn't True Stream Media and Corbett Report talk about that when they're doing these deep dive coverage into how this war and that war was a false flag? You see what I'm saying? Don't you understand? Don't you see this? And see, that's what I'm saying. When True Stream Media and Corbett Report finally start to tell the second half of truth that they've been omitting all these years, when they start to admit, well, you know, they don't go out to fight. They leave that to the poor. All that Corbett Report has to do is parrot the Black Sabbath lyrics from the song War Pigs. And there's the truth. All of us, now the second half of the truth that Corbett Report has been ignoring all these years while he goes on in his deep dives about false flag wars and how World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, it's all false flags. Yeah. Politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why should they go out to fight? They leave that all to the poor. Well, is Corbett Report poor? Fuck no. Is True Stream Media, are they poor? No. And that's why you're going to start seeing this massive influx of phobos, fake hobos, people pretending to be poor, because they don't want that. Once this secret gets out, all these people are going to have a very different view of Corbett and True Stream Media and Richie from Boston. These fucking cunts, all they got to do is post a GoFundMe and they'll get fucking $50,000 in like 2 weeks. They're not poor, but yet they're the ones going on and on and on endlessly for years, explaining in all their knowledge of how wars are false flags. But yet they omit the second half of that truth, that it's the poor that fight those wars. Why do they omit it? Because they're not poor. Once they finally get around after all these years to getting backed into a corner where they finally have to say and get permission by their handlers to say that it's the poor that suffer from all this, that's when you know that the war is like it's on and cracking. When Corbett Report starts to admit that it's the poor that suffer from false flag wars, it's the poor. And then you look at Corbett Report and you realize, well, he's not poor. He's been making 6 figures off of his stupid fucking channel. What is he doing? Talking about how wars are false flags while omitting the second half of that truth, that it's the poor that suffer from all these false flag wars. Like, nobody talks about the poor. And that's what I'm saying. When they start talking about the poor on BitChute and Rumble, all these greatest hits on BitChute and Rumble and Odyssey, that's the curtain being pulled to the side, and everyone seeing the brick wall at the back of the building. That means, so Corbett Report is finally pulling the curtain all the way open, and you see the brick wall. He's only showing you half of the brick wall. And these guys, that's their game they've been playing all these years. They're the new guard. They're just like mainstream media. So anyways, whatever, man. What the fuck ever, huh?